Hey everyone, this is Heidi St. John. Welcome to the podcast. Boy, you guys are in for a treat today because one of my favorite people in the whole wide world, she is a fire-breathing dragon for homeschooling and for freedom across this great nation. Sam Sorbo is in the studio with me today, and we're going to have a hoot and hollering good time talking about Hollywood and education and all the things. You guys are going to love this conversation. I want to say a big shout out to my friends at the Functional Medical Institute for sponsoring today's show. Check them out at homeschoolhealth.com. You guys, sit down, grab a cup of coffee. You are going to love this episode. Stick around. I think you're going to be encouraged. Well, thank you guys for tuning in today. I want to let you know that this is the middle of my speaking season, and I am going to be all over the country this year. Coming right up, I'm coming to Massachusetts. You guys, let's go. Let's go. I'm going to be in New England. Come out and hear me. I'll be at Mass Hope right around the corner in April. You guys can go to my website, HeidiSt.John.com/events to find out where I'll be. I'm scheduled to be every single weekend in May, all over the country, FPEA, Pigeon Forge, Lee Summit, Branson, the Homeschool Experience at the Ark Encounter, and lots of other places throughout the summer. So I'd love to see you and hug your neck and hear how you're doing and what's going on in your life. So check that out, HeidiSt.John.com/events. All right, without further ado, many of you have heard Sam on my show before. She's an actress, she's an author, she's a homeschool advocate, and she's a dear friend of mine. We've been having a great time hanging out for the last couple of days. Sam, good grief, girl. Welcome.
I love your energy. It's just like, well, you don't understand. We've been just sort of chatting here, going back and forth, taking care of some business and stuff.
True.
And then the camera turns on and it's like, Heidi. It's like, welcome to Heidi.
And she's back. Well, yeah. I took an antihistamine. I mean, to be fair.
Yeah.
It
slowed you down a little bit, but not for camera.
No, we were having coffee out on my back porch this morning, just sitting there really quiet. Took a nice walk. We took a walk.
It was great.
Birds are singing, and I start sneezing. And I cannot stop sneezing. And if you guys look really closely, you'll see the bags under my eyes.
Don't look. Just don't look.
Try not to really, it's a miracle that I was able to sort of put this together. But I took an antihistamine. And
You're a trooper. You do it for the fans.
Come on. I mean, right before I was telling her, I'm like, oh no, man, I can't do it. Melissa's like, 3, 2, 1. Welcome. Here we are. We're here. That's how it works.
That's how it works.
You're here
the
in the
magic
Northwest.
of cinema.
It's not magic at all. It's just sheer willpower.
There's a certain magic to that.
Yeah, that's true. I think that might be true. You are one of my favorite people on the planet, partly because I love that you're using the platform God's given you to actually do good things. Lots of people use the platform for bad things, and you're using yours for good things. I asked you before we started, could we talk about Hollywood, or as I like to call it on my show, Hollyweird, because it's pretty weird. It's pretty weird. You're married, obviously, to Kevin, like Hercules. Your
superhero.
Your girl married Hercules.
Yes, it's true.
It's true. You married Hercules. And you guys have been married for a long time now. You got 3 kids who are like all young adults.
Yes, 27 years.
Yeah.
A little bit of advice for people out there. When we first got married, we committed to never spending more than 2 weeks apart. Mm-hmm. And that is really one of the saving graces in our marriage.
It's really important.
Yeah. You can't do it. And of course, that's the Hollywood thing is, well, you're 3 months on a set in Indonesia or whatever. And that's I guarantee that contributes to divorce, right? Yeah. When the spouse isn't around. It just, you're just not strong enough. You're just not that strong. And so we were very, I think we were blessed to sort of have that recognition and just say, you know what, let's just make a pact. We just won't spend more than 2 weeks apart ever. And we kept that up until our youngest was 16 years old.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
It's amazing. Well, and the world does a lot to just pull couples apart anyway, right? And I was just speaking a couple of weekends ago in Ohio. We were talking about marriage. And I said, listen, marriages don't just end overnight. A marriage just doesn't fall apart.
They fall apart. Person for a reason.
Yeah, 100%. And marriages marriages die from neglect. It's very rarely do you hear someone just had an affair. I mean, there were not that affairs are right. Don't write me letters. But there are circumstances that lead up to those decisions. And so often it's just neglect. And you can be neglectful of your marriage even if you're not traveling. I mean, you can neglect your marriage.
Oh, in the house.
In the house.
Right
you could,
inside,
you could
for
be
sure.
living together for, lots and lots of years and still.
Well, you get on somebody's nerves. Look, marriages have struggles. Every relationship
It's
has
work.
struggles. It's work. And if you're not willing to work at it, then you'll sacrifice something.
Mm-hmm.
And, those sacrifices of, whatever it is, the intimacy or whatever, because you're angry at the person or they add up. They just add up.
Yeah, they really do. You guys have a really interesting love story. We've talked about before, but I think it's worth talking about again, right? Because not everybody gets to meet like you did. Tell us a little bit about, where you came from, Sam, and how you guys met. And then we'll talk about how you got into homeschooling, because that in and of itself is kind of an interesting story.
That's another love story.
Mm-hmm. It is.
It's a love. Yeah. It's absolutely
still
a love story.
Going on today.
So I had gotten to a point where I knew that I knew I wanted to be married. I knew I wanted kids, and I wasn't meeting the right guys. They were wrong. And I finally said to God, okay, I get it. There's going to be a compromise, but just tell me what the compromise is, because is he going to be short? Is he going to be bald? Is he going to be whatever?
And God was like,
stupid.
I have Hercules for you.
What am I going to have to sacrifice, God? And then I flew down to New Zealand and I played a princess. And
this story, it never gets old. I gotta say,
this is the first night on set. Okay, well, anyway, but it's true. It doesn't get old, right?
No, it doesn't.
And so I'm on set and I'm dressed as a princess and we're standing on a drawbridge outside a castle over a moat, and there's steam wafting up from the moat, fog and whatever. And there's Hercules dressed as Hercules with all the Hercules, body and stuff.
Yes, right.
And
the outfit, the clothing, or the lack thereof.
Exactly. Well, he was actually fully dressed. It was a vest.
Yes.
But his leather pants together with the boots were 12 pounds.
Come on.
Like, he was very dressed, but it was good looking. Like,
I mean, you can dress it up, dress it down.
It was funny because we were rehearsing our lines, and you rehearse up into a point, and then you go say, okay, and then we kiss. Yes, that's right, and then we kiss, because you don't rehearse the kiss over and over again. And he kept going up on his lines, and I was like, this is so unprofessional. What kind of actor is this? He carries his own show and he literally forgets his lines, but he was forgetting his lines because he was kind of smitten. And so he turns to his sidekick and he goes, help me out here, Michael. And Michael goes, oh, I'm not touching this with, no, I'm out of this. I don't know what's happening there, but that's not. And then we kissed, yeah. And I could go into that part of the story.
That was like the end of that. Like, were you like, hey?
So did
the sparks fly? I mean, come on.
So we took a break because we had to relight. So George Lyle, the first AD, comes over. He says, take a break, go sit in your chairs. We need to relight a little bit, tweak the lighting. And so we sat down and I turned to the makeup artist and I said, do you have any breath mints? And so all three makeup artists are like whipping out the breath mints for us. And I said, oh, no, not for me, for him. And then I said, you know what, to be fair, I'll take one too. So I took one. So Kevin, he's an outrageous flirt. He leans over and he goes, maybe we should see if these work.
Excellent.
And that was a challenge.
Yes.
That I don't back down from a challenge. Plus, he was did I mention he's good looking?
Yes.
And so I was like, maybe we should. So he came over to my chair, and the director's chairs, they're a little bit flimsy, but they have those. Yeah.
The nice arm rests.
Yeah. He puts his big hands, one on either armrest, and he leaned in.
Oh, boy.
He leaned in, and he paused, and he looked me in the eye before he kissed me, and that was it.
Oh, man.
That was the end of.
There's Kevin Sorbo
the beginning.
Getting her done. He's like, let's wrap up the deal right now.
Yeah, seriously.
Yeah. It's amazing. I don't think you and I have ever talked about this, and we've had lots and lots of conversations over the years. But it was I broke up with my husband, and we never kissed or anything. We'd gone out a few times, but there was a guy that wanted to ask me out that I had been kind of noticed for a long time, like the 6'4" basketball player. And I had heard rumor that he wanted to ask me out. Uh-huh. And I thought, I am too young to be tied down. Uh-huh. I was like 18. And so I said to Jay, I was just really honest with him. I said, I don't feel ready to be like committed. And he goes, all right, well, do you mind if can I just kiss you? Can we have just a kiss goodbye? And I was like, okay, dude, girl. That was it.
He knew how to seal the deal.
One kiss from that boy. And I was like, I'm about to make a big mistake. Anyway, we went through with the sort of breakup. But I never
Oh, you
forgot
did?
that. Yeah, I never forgot that
Oh.
kiss. And like 3 months later, I was like, was good.
He planted a seed.
He absolutely did.
Oh, that's
and I
nice.
still tease him about it. I was just like, you knew what you were doing. He was like, maybe
Maybe
not.
I
And
did.
actually, one of the best things he did, this is a pro dating tip for all of you guys who aren't actually, he didn't like follow me around like a little puppy dog.
Right.
He didn't like,
Oh,
he never
no.
did. He was just like, okay, you go do you.
Right.
You know, but the kiss.
But don't forget.
Yeah. I
This
heard
is
like
what's
that
waiting.
Hall & Oates song on
Yeah.
my head, right?
Just a kiss. A kiss.
That's right. That's exactly right. So now we have another. We were just saying before we started recording, we're like separated at birth.
Yeah, we're like sisters from different mothers.
Yeah, I think that's
Yeah.
true. Yeah, and now we have the kiss thing in common too.
yeah.
Really, just that one. So guys, pay attention. It matters to your wife.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
It matters. It matters now. It
matters now.
And so you guys have been married for 27 years. And
Yep.
I think, you nurture a marriage and girl, it just gets better. I feel like I am enjoying being married now, 35 years later.
Right.
As our kids are, growing up and mostly grown.
Yeah.
And you can kind of reconnect a little bit.
You go through different stages
Mm-hmm.
for sure. And I was telling you earlier, so last fall I decided, I purposed, and I told my assistant this, I'm going to spend more time with Kevin. I'm going to spend more time traveling with him. I will choose to go with him on his speaking events and stuff like that. So, and I was telling her because I didn't want her to get confused, like, why are you turning this thing down or not doing this thing? And it's a choice, right?
It is.
And it's funny because within the first month of the new year, we had booked 4 speaking engagements together, and that had nothing to that wasn't my doing,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
It was just that I spoke the words,
Yeah.
and it was fulfilled or something.
Yeah,
So
it matters. In this season, because my husband's gone back to working as the worship pastor at our church, and so he's not available to travel with me on the weekends like he normally would. And so
Right.
for 15 years,
Right.
every breathing
did it one way.
Yes, and I don't like it as much. I got to say,
Yes.
I mean, and nothing against you, Melissa. I love traveling with you, and everyone knows that's my girl, Melissa. We travel everywhere together, but I really do miss having Jay out on the road. There's like a steadying, kind of a steadying force.
Of
And
course.
I think, my analogy of husbands and wives, having grown up in the 70s and watching all the 70s cartoons, I think we're like the Wonder Twins, right? You remember that, Sam, right? Wonder Twin powers, activate, right?
Sorry.
Come on. She didn't do the 70s cartoons.
No,
what is
that was-
wrong with you?
Yeah, no, I guess not.
So I did the latchkey kid
literally-
thing. No, it's great. The Wonder Twins and all. There's a lot of people going, what? How can you be married to Hercules and not know the Wonder Twins?
it's a full blank.
Okay,
for me.
so now I'll be texting you. When we're done here, I shall
I
be.
actually don't believe that's a thing. I think
it
she's
is.
just making something up to make me feel inferior somehow.
Girl, I'm going to be educating you in all things Wonder Twins.
Okay.
But I love the sort of analogy, because I think, the husband and wife come together and bam, there's this magic. My friend Tim
Yes.
Clinton says that whatever wires together, if you fire together, you wire together.
Oh,
And I
interesting.
think it's
Yeah.
true, right? I think it's true.
It's interesting because my kids are now of an age where they want to get married.
Mm-hmm.
And my oldest is going through different gals, like trying things out. And,
As we do.
right? And it's and my other son also, and I want to tell them the right person is out there.
Yep.
And you will know it when you find it.
Yes.
But it's hard to say that because I also know couples who got married and then got divorced and then got married again to each other. Like, so I know different versions work, but I would really like them to find the person they can't live without. And I said to my son, my prayer for you is that you find a girl who's too good for you.
Yeah.
But she doesn't know it.
Ah. So he's marrying up, but she doesn't know
But
it.
she doesn't get that she's actually too good for him.
She doesn't know she's beautiful. That's the song. It's another song. I'm hearing all kinds
another
of songs
song.
in my head. Yeah.
So to bring the story full circle, we were engaged for about 8 months. And so 4 months before, we were basically planning to get married. And we weren't planning to have a big wedding. We were both a little bit older, and it wasn't like a big deal. I wasn't going to get the dress. I just was like, but I was all about the commitment, right?
Yeah.
But 4 months before we were intending to get married, he had 3 strokes, and he ended up in intensive care. And
That's scary.
it was Oh, he almost died.
Yeah.
And he could have been paralyzed. He could have lost an arm. He could have coulda, right? But he's in intensive care, and I booked the very best job that you could conceive of for an actress. It was a national network TV commercial for ice cream, my favorite thing. First class all the way. Yeah. Lots of money on the back end. But I would have had to fly to New York, so I walked into the intensive care room, and I told him, and I said, "Would you like me not to go?" Now, we were committed to get married, but I was still a career girl, right? I was making money, I was successful, and
you were modeling and acting,
and up until that point, it had been going through my mind, how am I going to make this work? How do you make a marriage work when he lives in New Zealand and my career's in LA, and I can't just walk away from my career because, let's face it, we're all raised to make the money. And, my career's valuable too, and I'm an independent woman. And I said to him, do you want me not to go to New York? And which put him actually in the unenviable position of having to say that he needed me. But he said it. He said those words. He said, yeah, I want you not to go. And I sat down and I was like, oh, that's the compromise.
Oh, that's what the kiss was about.
That's the compromise.
No, I mean, telling you,
that's what I had to walk away from.
Yeah.
To obtain the thing that I wanted most. And, sometimes you have to sacrifice something of great value to obtain the thing of more value.
That's right.
And that's the meaning of sacrifice. That is what sacrifice is about. It's not you sacrifice something that's meaningless to you.
Right, because then it's not a sacrifice.
To get the better thing.
Right.
But our culture tells us sacrifice is just a net loss. That's what our culture has inculcated in us. And so we think, oh, you sacrificed. No, you gained, right? That's what the sacrifice is. Oh, you sacrificed. That's so awesome. And so I have a marriage that's solid.
Yeah.
Could have gone the other way.
Yep.
I could have gone to New York.
Well, and I think, what you're also doing now, and you didn't realize it then, is you're setting an example for lots and lots of women who are watching, the sacrifices that we make. And really what you're doing is you're not sacrificing the best thing on the altar of a good thing, right? You had the chance to do that, and you were able to be clear-headed enough about what was eventually going to be the most important thing in your life,
right?
Which is that relationship with your husband.
Right.
And it's worth sacrificing for.
And it was a blessing that I knew what I wanted. And I found what I wanted. And then I was put in the position of making that choice.
Wow.
Right? And that's an amazing thing. And that's why I said it was the best possible job that I could have gotten. It wasn't go shoot some, photos for Macy's.
Right.
Or go do one day on a sitcom or a soap opera or whatever. It was this really great job that I had to give up. And it just brought tremendous clarity. This is one of the things that I talk to young women about, is in school we're taught make pros and cons lists. Have you ever done that?
Oh, yes.
Have you ever looked at it afterwards?
Yep. Jay and I did it before we got married.
Pro, con. There's a lot of pros and a lot of cons, and I am no closer to making a decision.
Yeah.
Because pros and cons lists don't work. You can't say, well, I get all of this, and I don't, it doesn't work that way. You set your priorities. Once you set your priority, it's a litmus test. Does it hit that priority or not? My priority at that point was Kevin, was family, was my future. Did the TV commercial hit that priority? No, not as much as he did. And so then the choice was easy.
Yeah.
And it brings such clarity. And I've just been blessed in my life to have those binary choices where several times where it was just like, oh, that's clarity. Okay, I give that up. I go this way instead. I don't try to straddle two horses while they're galloping.
Well, and this is the lie of the feminist movement.
Exactly.
Right. I mean, this is the lie of feminism that has injured women now for generations in this country, who've told them that you can actually have it all. But the truth is you can't have it all. At some point, you have to choose. Well, you have to choose.
Exactly.
You made a choice. I've made choices. And we make those choices based on what we want for, 10, 15, 20 years down the road. You have to be able to project into your future. And that's really what you were doing. I mean, you understand that this career choice you make is really going to be temporary at the end of the day. But the decision that you made to come alongside Kevin
if you contrast
is
it
different.
with, and I can't remember the actress, but she was accepting a Golden Globe and she was so grateful for her abortion.
Oh, right.
Right?
Yeah.
And you just go, wow, that's an interesting worldview. I wonder how far that's going to get her.
Yeah.
Right? Later on in life. Yeah. It's just incredible.
Yeah.
And so,
that's not going to age well.
You wonder.
It's not.
I mean, you don't wonder, but I'm just saying, like, for her, that's an incredible admission. Mm-hmm. And I wonder how she's going to feel about it 20 years from now. Mm-hmm. And I don't think it'll age well.
No.
But some people never reach kind of that enlightenment of an acknowledgement of what they've actually given up. And, when there's so many different ways to go with this, and I know you wanted to talk about Hollywood, but I will say...
Oh, we'll get to it.
Parents don't understand what they sacrifice when they think that the school is providing them childcare and education.
Right.
Which it's not providing, right? It's providing child abuse and the antithesis of education.
They're getting schooled.
Thank you.
That's like your favorite line.
Yeah.
That's my favorite Sam Sorbo line. I use it all the time.
It's not there.
When I tell people, you didn't get educated, you got schooled. Thank you, Sam. Yeah. It's true. Yeah.
So
you make this choice and you decide, okay, I'm going to go this direction. There's a fork in the road and you decide I'm going to link arms with Hercules, this handsome hunk of burning love, and we're going to go make a family.
Yeah.
And that's what you did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then years later we got the 3 kids and so on our first date, on Kevin and my first date, we went to the movies and we were sitting in an empty movie theater. No one else was there. And the lights were still up and we were just chatting. It was our first date. And he goes, I know where I want to get married. Because that's first date conversation.
Come on.
He knew right away. He was like, oh, this is the one.
Yeah.
And I said, where? And he said, there's a little chapel in the Swiss Alps. And I said, in Garmisch? And he said, yeah, how do you know that? And I said, I actually have a picture of it framed on my wall that my grandfather gave me.
Wow.
Yeah, just random. He goes, that's random. But anyway, I'm having 3 kids, boy, boy, girl. And I said, that's so weird because that's what I'm having, boy, boy, girl. And that's what we had.
I love that.
Yeah.
Isn't that fun?
Yeah.
As it turns out, the most important things in this life have nothing to do with money. They have nothing to do with platform. I mean, I know that you and I have seen this similarly, probably myself not to the degree that you have, but just in the circles that I run in, women who have given up their families, sometimes their marriages, for a momentary shot at platform, right? Mm-hmm. Whether it's, I'm going to become a famous blogger, or I'm going to be really good at podcasting, or I'm going to be really great at television. I'll be a television personality. And they give up the best thing, chasing a good thing.
Yes.
And it's not that those things are bad. Blogging is good. Writing books is good. Speaking is good. All these things I love to do.
Yeah.
But at the end
of what?
At the cost of the thing that is the most precious at the end of the day. And I think women, we give up a lot of our, and we're told to do this. We give up our youth and the best years of our lives, the childbearing years, which were young enough to really, I had a baby into my 40s. And I'm glad that I did, but I'll tell you, it was easier in my 20s, for sure. And we've been telling women that's not the most important thing. The family is the second. The children are this. They're like a distraction on the highway of life. Have a baby, and then really just money. Just make all the money. Get the platform. Pursue fame, whatever it is.
Don't have a child if you can't afford it.
What a
you
dumb
can't
thing.
afford to have a child.
What a dumb thing.
Yeah, the whole thing is so messed up.
Yeah,
and my heart breaks for young women because I know that they're being fed these lies. I was so the genesis of my understanding came when I was early 20s and I had made a lot of money. I was very successful as a model. And I only became a model because I was working on an ulcer at college I was studying engineering, and I was just so fraught with anxiety over the potential of not being able to make the money. Right. And I recognized, it took me a while to recognize, I didn't recognize it quite in the moment, but I had to take a year off from college because I was so sick. And so I ended up going to Paris and modeling for a year. And I was very successful.
How does one end up Going to Paris
I went to New
and
York.
modeling. Okay.
So I had interned in New York at Blue Cross Blue Shield in computer programming. And I went back to New York the following year, and they had done away with the program. So then I was stuck in New York, staying at a friend's place. And actually, I got a job waiting tables, and I had three days of trailing to teach me how to wait tables. And that last day, I was supposed to be waiting the tables, and I was so bad. One of the tables said to me, "Why don't you just go model?" So I did. It's kind of funny.
That is funny.
And so my agency, I actually was going to go to the north of France at a university and intern as a research assistant in biomedical engineering. And my agency said to me, after working for the summer in New York, they said, I said, I'm going to Paris. I'm going to France because I want to learn French. And they said, why don't you go to Paris and learn French and earn money? And I was like, that actually sounds...
That's interesting. Yeah, there's a good idea.
That sounds even better, you know?
Yeah.
And so that's how I ended up modeling. And like I said, it came easy to me. I understood the mechanics of performing in front of the camera and all that stuff. And I always wanted to act, but I was dissuaded from that because nobody succeeds in acting.
Yeah.
Nobody, including, strangely, my drama teacher. Right? She didn't succeed because she was a drama teacher in Pittsburgh.
Right. If you had succeeded, you'd be doing something different than teaching.
And so her worldview was nobody succeeds because she didn't succeed. So I came back. I made enough money that school was super easy. I got straight A's, took the hardest courses. It was like nothing. And so I finally said, okay, then I don't really need school. Why am I chasing their dream when I could chase my dream, make a ton of money, and do everything else that I want to do, learn languages, for instance. And so that was my first sort of binary choice. Oh, if I prioritize what I really want versus what they want for me, then I end up on this road. And because I ended up on that road and I realized, wait, I did everything they taught me to do already. I made the money. I grabbed the brass ring. This is what they told me my life was all for. This is my purpose. I fulfilled my purpose. Is it time for me to die? Like, am I done? Stick a fork in me? Because I fulfilled my purpose according to them? And that's like, I'm angry about this because I see young women being drawn into this lie. And it's a lie. And so
and they're giving up the best years of their lives for it.
Right? So then I went on a search because I was not raised with any religion. I was raised Jewish, but basically without religion. And so I went on a search for purpose. I needed to find meaning in life. And what I found instead, or maybe not instead, but I found order in the universe. And I decided that order had a name. And the name was God. I mean, I could have called it dog, but I didn't. I called it God. You know, like you can call it whatever, but
but there's definitely an order there.
You might as well call it God because that's the understanding of a lot of the world anyway. And so that put me on this path of understanding. Wait, my life has purpose beyond the dollar, and beyond utilitarianism, which is what we train in our schools. And so by the time I had children, even though I was still on the school, I still thought school's educated. It took me a while to finally realize that they had pulled the wool over my eyes. But I was lucky enough to, because I fulfilled their mandate, to understand that their mandate was false. And so that's why I've become such a huge advocate of the truth.
Well, I think you and I have a similar story in that, I mean, coming in from different ways, but when I realized I had my daughter in public school, when I started just sort of, experimenting with my second daughter, who's now 30 and a mother herself, and just experimenting to see, because she was bored and she needed something to do. And so I thought, well, I'll just teach her to read, And I remember actually being angry one day, realizing these guys have lied to me. Like, you lied to me. You told me I couldn't teach her to read. You said only professionals could do that.
Oh, that's interesting.
And as it turns out, I can do it in 20 minutes a day.
Was she bored because her older sister was gone, so she lost her playmate?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. That was a large part of it. And
Boy,
I went to put her...
Is that not the destruction of the family?
Well, it's awful because she wanted to be with her sister.
Of course.
And so me, not knowing anything different, I thought, well, then I should put her in school so she can be 2 doors down from her sister and see her at recess.
Right, and have friends.
Right. And
that's such a lie.
It's such a lie. And I remember just feeling when I realized, Sam, that I could teach her to read. And not only could I teach her to read, but I was loving doing it. Not only could I teach her to read, but it was as fulfilling for me to watch her have these little light bulb moments as it was for her to have them.
Of course.
And then I was like, okay. So we got to do something different.
So my newest book is Parents' Guide to Homeschool. And I go through all of these lies.
Yeah.
And I debunk them, right? Learning is hard. No, it's not.
No, it's not.
Teaching is hard. No, it's not. It's like super joyful.
Yeah.
Like all of these different lies that we just, they're never said explicitly, but tacitly. And so we just accept them because they're just part of that paradigm.
Yeah.
And when you grow up in the school paradigm, you just absorb all of these lies.
Yeah.
And you assume them.
Yeah.
You don't even recognize that you're assuming them.
Yeah, because no one said to me, you can't teach your child to read. I just knew it.
You just
I just knew it because I didn't go to college for a teaching certificate.
That's right.
And so I knew, of course, I can't do that. I don't have a teaching certificate. And when I realized I could do it, and I realized that these guys, if I let them, they would take the best hours of my child's day away from me.
That's right.
And I get her at the end of the day when she's tired and she just wants to come home and watch Roadrunner for 45 minutes before I give her dinner. And then it's wash, rinse, repeat. And we do this over and over and over again. And I blink and she's gone.
Right.
And I thank God that he got a hold of my heart when she was in second grade. Yeah. And we brought him home,
There's a book called 18 Summers.
Yeah.
And it's kind of silly because you can just avoid the whole thing by homeschooling your kids.
Right.
And being,
Right.
But it's like this very
you could
sad...
have 18 years instead of 18 summers.
Exactly. It's this very sad thing. And by the way, if you home educate and I call it home education, but if you home educate your children, then at the end of it, they're still around. Because I think that it is a bit of a what's the word? Another false thing that children move out of the house at 18 and go to college. I think that's also this very negative thing that's been imposed on society.
Well, you were just at my house. I mean, you've stayed at my house a couple of times over the years, and I've still got, a 23-year-old and a 21-year-old at the house, and they love being there, and we love having them around. And I think,
and by the way, you get them to work for you because they're living there rent free. So you impose certain things on them because they're adults and they can take that.
I told you I've traded rent for meal making.
Right.
And I put that because they're I've got my two girls that are adults living with us are really interested in nutrition, and so they're the ones who are like, this is a chia seed salad, and I'm like, oh, okay, ooh, that was pretty good. Can you make that again tomorrow? Which is great, and it helps me and I help them, and they're learning a new skill, and really, my girls, they want to be married. Like, they're looking forward to being married, and in the meantime, we're just enjoying them.
Right.
And I think it's another lie that the teenage years are difficult.
Did they choose not to go to college? I can't remember.
So Sydney, yes. So Summer is an entrepreneur. Like, she's a serial entrepreneur, like her parents. She is teaching. I think she has 15 music students. So she's a music teacher.
Okay.
She does the beekeeping operation here. She teaches American Sign Language. She's just discovered these are things she loves to do, and she wants to be a homeschool mom.
Right.
So she's just practicing on other people's kids right now, and she's loving every minute of it. And it's great. And I keep telling her, Summer, God has somebody for you, right?
Yeah.
And when you meet him, just like you said, you'll know. When I realized, Jay's the one. I mean, we're like, I'm not a fan of long engagements or anything. Like, I'm just like, when bam, let's get the show on the road. Let's go.
And our culture tells us no.
That's right.
Our culture says no. Be engaged for a while. Play the field for a while.
Yeah.
Try out different things. There's a great book out there, and I'm blanking on the name of the author, but The Best Sex You Never Had, and it's about abstinence. Because if you abstain before marriage, it will be the best sex you ever had. Right?
That's exactly right. And you're not worried about your husband having images of somebody else in his head because you guys waited for each other.
That's right.
It's such a beautiful and wonderful thing. I want to get back to you and Kevin, because as you guys went into Hollywood then, right? And you've spent lots of years.
Well, we were blessed because he shot the Hercules show in New Zealand. Then he went on to a 5-year show that we shot in Vancouver. And so
Vancouver, British Columbia.
And so he wasn't really, he was of Hollywood, but he wasn't in Hollywood.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, which is helpful.
Which was a little bit of a saving grace, frankly. And when I met him, by the way, I ascertained he was conservative. He was Christian. He liked country music. Like, he checked all the boxes.
Yeah.
And so at that moment, I was like, oh, God, thank you.
Yeah.
No compromise, right?
Yeah, yeah,
And then the compromise came later, which is fine. And I was so grateful for that. But my point is, I don't know what would have happened if he actually lived in Hollywood and did all of that, because there is an erosion that happens depending on who you're hanging out with.
Yes.
And in New Zealand, he was his own guy. He worked 17 hours a day, which is why he got sick. He worked very, very long days. He loved what he did. He loved doing this. He was the first one on set. He was the last one to leave. I've seen him on set where the director says, okay, when you come in the scene, could you just be a little bit more upbeat? And he says, okay, but I just came from the funeral. Are you sure that's what you want? Because he knows the whole thing better than basically anybody else on set. Like, he's that committed. And so he was insulated. He became the number one show in the world in 172 countries.
It's crazy.
But he lived in this little tiny New Zealand. And, if you know New Zealand, they have the tall poppy syndrome. So they don't let you get bigger than your britches. So there was that too.
Yeah, yeah.
And
it was grounding.
Yeah, it was grounding. And then we went straight to Vancouver, Canada, which was another sort of microcosm bubble, if you will. And but he's from Minnesota. He's from a small town, Minnesota. Religious parents, went to church twice a week. He's got that grounding. And ladies, find somebody with that kind of grounding.
Come on.
If you can.
Yeah.
And if you can't, men are trainable.
My husband, we got married when I was 19 and he was 21, and his dad said, that's what I was telling you, son. Marry him young and raise him the way you want him. And I was like, never say that to me again.
Yeah. Good luck with that.
Never say that to me again.
You believe that if you want.
So great.
I will say, because I want to, we've sold young people a bill of goods.
Yeah. And
what we've done to young men, because of feminism. And so here's the paradigm that people have to understand. Women have all the power. That's why the Bible says, obey your husbands. Men don't have power. That's why the Bible says to them, love your wives. But women decided, you know what, we have all the power. Eve in the Garden of Eden, she's the one who made the choice.
That's right.
And so the women come in like gangbusters, and they take all the power. At their own disservice, they take the power from men. And so now we have an entire culture of men, young boys who refuse to grow up because no one is holding that standard, which is what the women used to do. They were like, oh, you want this?
You have to work for it. You have to work for it.
You need a job, dude. You need to make a living. You need to provide and protect. You better be a man. But now, nope, it's all for free because we were sold. You want some too.
Yeah.
Which is not entirely a lie, but it's a lie in the sense of, no, you have more value than that.
Yes.
It's not you want some, it's you're going to hold out for the right thing. And so we've done this terrible disservice to young men. My son goes out, he's a very popular guy. He's like the captain of the football team kind of guy. And he has women throwing themselves at him. He says, Mom, it's so sad. Because he doesn't want any of those chicks. Like, that's not what he's looking for.
Right.
But he literally could just take a different girl home every night, basically.
Right.
And that's pathetic. That's meaningless existence. That's nihilism right there. And it just leads to destruction. And yet, we have this whole culture that we've gotten
built around it.
Yes.
It's built around it. And if you get pregnant, well, then now you kill your baby.
Right. It's all built in.
And then the cycle starts over again. And we saw this, right? Gloria Steinem, who famously, that woman going to have a lot to answer for someday because of the lie that she really perpetuated in the culture that, it's all about free sex and free love. And if you wind up, and this is why we push abortion, and this is why, and she was the one.
You end up so lonely and 100%. Just distraught.
And we don't talk about how beautiful marriage is and how beautiful family life is.
Right.
And you and I have said this many times before. There's lots of things that you could do with your life, lots of things I could do with my life. And I said this last weekend when I was speaking in Dayton. I said, I love you guys. I love speaking. I'd rather be home with my kids. I'd rather be at home, sitting on the back porch with my
there's that.
husband, watching the sun go down. That's what is so precious about life.
Coming here, we just went on a little mini vacation, 3 days skiing with my 2 younger kids. So 19 and almost 21. And we got to the airport together and we were sitting in the, waiting area. And I got up to go and catch my flight here. And each of my kids stood up to hug me goodbye. And it was like, oh, I don't want to leave. Like, why do I? Oh, well, I'm going to go see Heidi. Life is not all bad.
She took one for the team.
But I want people to understand you have that right in front of you.
Yes.
But the culture tells you no, because your teenagers will rebel. And I speak against that lie, because that's one of the big lies. In fact, I've told famous people this, and then they won't have me back on their shows because their teenagers rebelled.
Yep.
Teenagers don't naturally rebel. If you raise your children yourself and you don't send them to an alternate authority,
yes,
then they have no reason to question your authority. And they will only question you when you're wrong. And if you have humility and are able to admit when you're wrong, then
you'll course correct. And that is also a lesson for them.
Right? So your children are actually meant to teach you. Imagine that. Like it's biblical, but we miss all of these lessons and these ideas because we don't read our Bibles anymore, because we went to school and we learned not to read. Did you know that? That's what you learn in school, is don't read the book because the teacher read it. She'll tell you everything that's in it.
And we got Cliff Notes.
And we got Cliff
and
Notes.
And when we were in high school, they gave you the book, but then they also said, here's the Cliff Notes.
But also, when you go to church, don't read the book, because the pastor's going to tell you what's in it. And that's why we have a bunch of so-called Christians who don't read their Bibles. And so, I speak against that lie, and I want people to know, and I'm sure you have a similar experience with your teenagers. My teenagers would come, my husband traveled a lot. And so I would go to bed early because I did a radio show first thing in the morning. And so I would be in bed, reading up for the show. And they would come into my bedroom, every other night or whatever.
Yeah, sit on the bed.
Just to download their day. And it was stupid stuff. It's like teenager stuff. I don't need to know this stuff necessarily.
But they're inviting you in.
That's right.
And I think that's the most important thing. They're inviting you in. They're saying
I get
your
emotional
opinion.
Because I want people to understand this is within your grasp. You just have to commit to the relationship. And, Dr. Laura used to say you have 2 chances for the parent-child relationship. One, when you're a child. You don't have control over that one. But when you're the adult, it's all you.
Yes.
It's all you.
Well, and parents need to know.
Design it the way you want it.
You're going to get out of the relationships in your family what you put into them.
Of course.
And think about the generations, and it makes me so sad. I am simultaneously sad and angry when I watch what has been stolen from millions and millions of young families who were taught that this is just how you do it. It's just the daily grind. You give birth to these kids and then you send them off to somebody else to raise.
And by the way, why do they do that? Because they've been raised to not think in the schools, because that's another one of the lies. Don't think. Just regurgitate.
We'll do it for you.
Just tell the teacher what she told you. Put that on the test and you'll get an A. And so it's literally schooling you to not read, not think, not try, because failure's bad. So don't try things. And what's the 4th one? There are 4 of them.
Did I tell you, it'll come back to you, Sam. Did I tell you that I've been thinking, I've been teasing Melissa about it. I'm threatening to write a book called, Well, That Didn't Work. I think that's such a great title. Well, that didn't work. All the things that I tried that didn't work. The things that Jay and I tried when we were doing the homeschool cooperatives that didn't work. The things that we tried when we first thought.
The failures.
Yes.
You should call it failure
is
good.
A teacher. Failure is good. And without the failure, you don't have anything to juxtapose it up against.
Course.
And so then you don't appreciate it. And I think the same thing is true in marriage. There were arguments that Jay and I got into when we were first married. And I was like, well, that didn't work. Go back and we're going to do that again.
Right.
Because that didn't work. We didn't get the desired outcome that we wanted.
First time we took our little child, our firstborn, right, to the restaurant.
Yep.
And it was mayhem.
Yeah.
It was mayhem.
Well, that didn't work.
And so on the drive home, my husband says, well, I guess we won't be eating out for a while. And I said to him, au contraire.
Yeah.
we are going out tomorrow night. You're
Yeah.
taking us out to dinner.
Yeah.
Because he needs to learn
Yeah.
what it is to eat in a restaurant. Once you teach a child, look, they've never done anything.
Right.
They don't learn it the first time because they've literally never done anything. They
Right.
have no pegs to hang information on. And so they have to go to the restaurant, 5, 6, 8 times, 10 times to understand. You order food, you wait for the food, then the food comes. Then you get up and run around or whatever.
Right.
And it's just training.
Yeah, it is. It's training. And we skip it because, this is my big rant on the podcast this Monday. I went on a whole big thing about how we're just lazy. We want comfort more than anything else in this country.
Ooh.
We have been taught that comfort is king. So we search for comfort. We take the path of least resistance. If we're going into the grocery store, we look for the automatic doors. I mean, I do it too, right? We're going for the path of least resistance. When you do that in parenting, when you do that in marriage, it's called, you're going to reap what you sow. If you sow wind, you're going to reap a storm. And when you refuse to discipline your children, when we refuse to say, hey, we're going to teach you how to behave in a restaurant. How many restaurants do you go into now, Sam, where the kids are sitting there with iPads and headphones?
Yeah, because that's the path of least resistance.
It's the path of least resistance.
Absolutely.
It's the one where you
And then you have no relationship with your child, like zero relationship, because they're just off on their devices.
That's right.
And you're sitting there on your device. Right?
Yes, because we are. Yeah, it's really true. And it's this culture, this laziness in our culture, this desire for comfort at all costs. And this is why we go for the money. Right. This is why we're like, we're going to go and we're going to make the money. We're going to hire the nanny.
The nanny. She'll take care of the.
Yeah. It's really true. And there, I had heard it said, and I need to find the quote because it's not me, but that opportunity is always dressed in overalls and looks an awful lot like work.
Yes.
And people don't want to don't want to put the work in.
No.
And you want a good marriage? It takes work.
So this reminds me of it's kind of a funny story. Braden was a little bit older. Shane was in his stroller, and we went to the birthday party down the street at the really fancy ritzy house. And we walk in, and they've got this fantasy pool with a tiki hut and a great big waterfall and all,
This is California.
No, it's actually Las Vegas. But
Las Vegas, okay.
But it was the perfect day. They had somebody painting faces. They had a balloon guy.
Nice.
And we walk in, and I don't know why, but Braden was like very young, 4, and he picked up they had little kiddie chairs, and he just knocked it over. And I was standing there and by the way, I was pregnant. Okay. So I was exhausted.
Yes. Right.
So I was
the name of the game,
right? With a toddler and Braden. And I just looked at him and I said, Braden. And he looks at me and I'm like, pick that up.
Yeah.
And he goes, no. And I said,
he's testing you.
Oh yeah. I literally said, oh, you want to go home? And he picked up the chair.
Yeah.
And the gal standing next to me who disciplined her children by threatening them that when their father came home, something bad would happen. She turns to me and literally says, I guess consequences work. And I'm like, where did you see consequences? But he knew I didn't really need to be there. Like we would be going home. You only have to give the consequence the first time. Your kids are smart. They will learn from that.
That's right.
But if you don't give the consequence, you have lost all credibility and you have no control. But we don't know these things because we all went to school and we lacked our own parents. So we are a largely unparented society.
Yes, absolutely
and so we've
true.
lost all of our parenting skills. But also, I just have to add, we've lost all of this other generational knowledge. Oh, make a mustard compote for that cold and it'll go away like that. We don't know that. We've got pharma. So you're talking about the simplest, the easiest way through is maybe not the healthiest.
Right.
And we ought to pay attention to that.
Boy, yeah, it's that path of least resistance. And it's really gotten us.
It's tempting.
Yes, it is. And it's gotten us into so much trouble. And I think, as I look back, and I was saying this on my show the other day, the most successful people I know are people who just had a really strong work ethic and they knew what they wanted and they were willing to work hard to get it. Yeah. And that translates into marriage. It translates into homeschooling. It translates into parenting. It translates into career. It translates into all of those areas. And we've got a generation who really have a very strong sense of entitlement and they believe that things should be given to them. And it's hurting us, right?
Yes.
It is hurting us. One of my favorite things to do, and I hate to admit it, is to watch people like Charlie Kirk and Lucas Miles on college campuses talking to these
It
young
is.
students. It's shocking. The entertainment. I mean, that's better than a 2.5 hour movie. I'll watch those
It's
videos
sad,
every day of the week and twice on Sunday. But it's also a really sad picture of a culture that has become unmoored from its foundations.
With suicidal.
Yeah, our founding fathers were not lazy. They were not lazy.
These were also homeschooled.
Yes, they were. Yes, they were. And you can make a really strong case for, if we could instill, this is why I like Mike Rowe so much, if we can instill this work ethic back into our young people, instead of giving, we're saying, work for it. You want this, work for it.
Right.
It's gonna cost you something, because if we don't make our kids work for things, if we're not willing to work for them, then we lose our marriages. Right? You've been married long enough to know. Yeah. Anybody's married, more than 5 minutes. It takes work.
It takes work.
It takes work.
It's not all
it's compromise.
honeymoon.
No, it isn't. And I think if you can put that work into it on the front end, especially, you front load that sucker with work and commitment, and we're making these hard choices right now while we're young. Then guess what? You're going to reap a blessing as you get older.
This is such an interesting point, because a lot of kids have like stars in their eyes. They get married and they think it's just going to be, it'll just work because we work so well together. Yes. Everything's great.
Yeah.
And there's really something to be said.
We're in love, Sam.
There's something to be said for sitting down and saying, okay, how many kids do you want?
Yes.
Because that's a negotiation. Mm-hmm. And what do you, are you going to homeschool? Like this, my oldest has to find a girl who's willing to homeschool. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, it's a non-starter. Mm-hmm. And he has all of these ideas of exactly what he's looking for, and none of them are superficial. But 10 kids, he wants 10 kids. He might compromise at 8. You know what I'm saying? And think, well, maybe after 8 he'll be puppy dog eyes or whatever. As I've heard works for some men. I don't know. Right? So, and it's clever.
Yeah.
It's
Jay
clever.
and I, one of the most interesting discussions that we had, he came from a family of 2 kids, so it's him and his sister, and there were 7 kids in my family. Mm-hmm. But my family was like really dysfunctional and super messed up, and I'm like the second oldest in this lineup of children. But one of the things I loved about my family growing up was the chaos and the mayhem of all those kids, because we had instant friends wherever we had each other, and it was a bad environment, but we had each other.
Right.
And most of us are still very close to this day. And I remember Jay and I sitting down one day, and we'd been married for a little while, and we did the pre-marriage counseling and all the things. And I'm like, let's talk about, like, 'cause we hadn't had children yet. And we knew before we even ever got married, if we had a little girl, we wanted to name her Savannah. It wasn't that we had never had these conversations. Mm-hmm. It's that we never really took it to the next
dangerous
level.
Territory.
Yeah. And so and I said, how many kids do you want? And he goes, well, I'd be happy with 2. And I'm like, are you kidding me? That is so boring. I would be so bored. Can you imagine how bored we will be? This just sounds like a nightmare to me. And he was like, wow, you got some strong feelings. And I was like, yeah. I said, I literally begged him for the 3rd. I begged him for Skylar. I was like, don't you think, if you, looking at him come on. And so he says, all right. He said, but if we're going to have 3, then we should have 4, because he wanted an even number of children.
How it goes, yeah.
Yeah, he wanted, which is funny because we ended up with 7.
Right.
And
after
all that, and I look back at it now, but I think, it's funny because you and I are talking about stuff that I spent quite a bit of time answering listener questions just a few days ago on my podcast. And one of them was over, how many kids are we going to have? And this is my strong advice to young married couples is, first of all, if it's not broke, don't break it. And don't make a permanent decision over a temporary, because this woman wrote in, it's interesting to hear what you have to say about this. Woman wrote in and she desperately wants to have more children, but her husband's like, nope, went and got a vasectomy. It sounds like he didn't ask her, he just went and did it, which to me,
I've heard that story before.
That is a heartbreaking decision. When somebody makes that kind of a decision in a marriage relationship,
there are deeper issues underlying that.
Oh yeah. And
because
it's just
that's
so
actually
heartbreaking.
An act of aggression.
It is. It's unkind. Right. And so I told this woman, I said, listen, I understand where you're coming from. Now you're going to have to ask the Lord to just soften your heart, and help you to be content with where you are. But my point in saying this, we were talking about how many children we have. Like these are the conversations that we have that actually build the future that we want to see together. They're important to have.
You can't get to New York if you don't buy a ticket to New York.
Right.
You have to envision the future. You may not get to the future that you envision, but you need a vision for the future in order to get to a future.
Boy, that's good.
I think.
Yeah, I think that's good.
So
that'll preach. And it goes back to that sort of intentionality.
Right. Absolutely.
You made an intentional decision when you chose Kevin over career.
Yeah.
Right. And that decision has borne out fruit. Jay and I now are in a season, I think you are too. It's so interesting because I'm not really sure how I got here, but poof. And all of a sudden I'm the Titus 2 mom. I'm like the older woman that's mentoring the younger women now. And I'm like, wow, life comes at you fast.
Right.
And I think to myself, boy, if Jay and I spent all these years building something, like a long time. The Homeschool Resource Center didn't just appear.
No.
Like it's years and years of praying and building and asking the Lord and working hard and staying up late and crying over things that you were like, Lord, I don't know what you want us to do. We've spent many, many years sowing, and now we're in a season of reaping. Mm-hmm. And those seasons change quickly. You go from sowing to reaping.
But you're still sowing also.
Yes.
I know you're not maybe sowing within your family, let's say, but I don't think you ever stop. Somebody like you doesn't stop sowing.
Probably not.
Right. But you're seeing
But we're starting
results.
to see fruit now.
Yes.
For years, I think people give up because they're sowing, but they don't see fruit. Well,
Right.
fruit takes time to grow.
That's right.
Right? It takes time. You plant an apple orchard, and those little saplings are going to take a while.
Right.
And I think, boy, it's worth it. Keeping your eye on the ball. And that's what I love so much about you, because you I think have had have the wisdom really and the foresight to say, the fruit that I want, I'm going to take this route because the fruit I'm looking for is over here. Right. And we're taught not to do that in the culture.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's absolutely right.
Yeah. Amazing.
And I didn't even know. I understood what was right. So my toddler came after me when I went back to work with her little finger and her little tiny voice and her one word. No, 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 no. So I picked her up and I put her on my hip and I said, what's this about? And she goes, bye-bye, at the nanny.
Yeah.
And that was when I realized my kids are really important. Why am I taking time away from them? Yeah. And by the way, there was this invisible tether between me and the house. And the farther I got from the house, the more strongly it pulled. Mm-hmm. When my kids were that little. Mm-hmm. It's still there, by the way. It doesn't really go away.
No, it doesn't. Because your heart's there.
Yeah.
I think God gives that to women.
I think so.
Yeah.
And we are taught by the culture to ignore it.
Yes.
And now you've got Erica Komisar, bless her heart, who's come out with the research to say, if you don't form good attachments with your children, what you're doing is setting them up for broken attachments later, for damaged attachments later, for attachment disorders later in life. And, for the longest time, we've said children are resilient. Like this super lie. Children are resilient. And then it turns out, oh no, they have all kinds of issues later in life with what happened to them when they were children.
Turns out it really matters.
Really matters. And so thank goodness for her. And that's been that because now there's a validity that I can say, no, scientifically, this is totally true. Devote yourself to your children, especially 0 to 3. That's her sort of sweet spot. But then we've got Dr. Leonard Sachs, who says, hey, your teenagers need you a lot more than they let on and a lot more than the culture tells you.
Come on.
And especially if they're in rebellion, they need you. So skip the play dates, he says, and do the family dates instead. And if your teenager wants to invite their best friend on vacation, no.
Man, we made the mistake of doing that one year, and we'll never do it again.
Vacation is for family.
Yeah.
It's for our family.
Yeah.
And no, you're not inviting somebody on vacation, which sounds kind of harsh because, well, they go to the theme park with all their friends or whatever. But in fact, our families are torn apart from the day the baby is born, from before the baby's born. Are you sure you're going to keep it? I mean, from before. And it's enough. It's enough. You and I are out there calling foul on that.
Yes.
And trying to, because the opposite of that is the joy, is the reward, is everything.
Well, and you have had your life with Kevin. I think a lot of people look at it from the outside and they see, movies that you guys have produced and things that you have done that a lot of people are like, I want to do that. And you're sitting here going, the most important thing we've ever done is raise a family. And
the only reason that I ever produced that movie is because of my kids.
Yeah.
which is the weirdest thing, right? So I walked away from my career, and then years later, God redeemed my career. Do you know that story?
No.
So I was homeschooling the kids, and I did a radio show. I did some other stuff, like I was doing stuff. But in the off time, right? I still had the kids were number one, and then the other stuff, right? And I was raising these 3 kids, Christians, in a largely secular society. And I was just musing in the car one day, man, I wish atheists had to defend their faith. Because that's a faith, man. You got to have a lot of faith to think, no, nothing.
Who is it? Is there a book? I don't have enough faith to be an atheist.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so, man, that would be a movie that'd be a movie I'd watch. And then I go, oh, that's a movie I'd love to write. I should write that movie, you know? And so I did. And I got somebody to help write it also. And within 2 weeks of him coming on board, Sean Hannity called my husband out of the blue. It wasn't like they were buddies. And he said, hey, I want to produce a faith-based movie. Do you have one? And I look at Kevin and I'm like, that's my movie. That's it.
Yeah.
And so we flew to New York and we pitched Sean, and he funded it. And that's how that movie got made. So if you don't believe that God redeemed my career and that I knew that was the only way that happened, because the movie never chases, the money never chases the movie. The movie chases the money and typically runs out of breath before the money does. That's how it works.
Yeah.
So, my message to young moms.
What's the name of that movie?
Let There Be Light.
There you go.
Let There Be Light. World's greatest atheist has a near-death experience and has to face a challenge to his assumptions about the world. My message to young moms is, if you devote yourself to your children, you will reap rewards you cannot imagine.
Yes.
I never imagined. I mean, I imagined after my kids went to school, I would go back to work. But then I didn't put them back. Then I stopped that.
Then you homeschooled them.
Then I got rid of that nonsense, right? And so that's my message, because your children bring so much richness to your life. We don't have any faith in children.
Nope.
That's why we send them to school, incidentally. We don't have faith in them that their curiosity will drive their learning. We go there, no, because I'm not that curious. My kids aren't that curious. Are you kidding me? Your kids are super curious.
They're born curious.
They're always asking questions.
Yeah.
The worst thing you can do is put them in an institution that tells them to sit down and shut up.
Come on.
So don't ask, don't try, don't think, don't read. Those are the 4. They are the intrinsic lessons that we learn in school that are not explicit, but they're implicit. And they are everything anti-education.
Yes. And then we wonder why we have an entire generation of kids and adults who will stand on a dot in the middle of a grocery store and don't even know what they're standing there for.
Come on. Come on.
Because we got schooled.
Of they get 3 or 4 people to stand in line.
Yes.
And then people just start standing in line.
And they don't know what they're doing there.
No idea.
No idea what they're doing there.
They're just standing in line. Everyone else is standing in line.
Yeah.
I guess this is where the line is.
I mean, were you amazed? Right in the middle of the scamdemic, how many people just don't do their own homework, don't ask questions? We've been taught not to ask questions.
That's what I say. Don't ask.
They cashed in.
You learned it in school. Don't ask. And I went on the CDC website and I asked about masks.
Yep.
Early on.
Yep. Me too.
And I downloaded it and I put it on my website.
Yep.
Because their own studies say that
not
cloth
good for
masks don't work.
No.
And actually can be deleterious.
Good for you.
Right.
It's detrimental to your health.
And I still see people wearing masks.
I know. I'll tell you, I was in the Seattle area several weeks ago to go up there and speak for a fabulous event. And I left my bag at home. I just a quick overnighter. I went up there with my daughter and Melissa, and I left my bag at home. And I get like 3/4 of the way up there, and I asked Sailor, "Can you hand me my hydrogen water bottle?" And she's like, "It's not back here." And I said, "No, it's in my tote bag." Anyway, I left my bag
accidentally. Yeah, I got it.
No makeup, no shoes. All the things I needed. So anyway, I don't know what else to do, and I'm up in this area that I'm not familiar with, and so we went to. I hate to confess, I went to Target.
Right.
I haven't been to a Target in like 8 years.
But you got to do what
I
you
needed some
do,
makeup. Right. Okay. Because this doesn't fix itself. So
That's not AI?
No. Actually, I'm hoping it's a little as puffy as we're talking.
No, you look good.
Anyway, the very first thing I see when I walk in the door of this Target is a man with a mask, with a trans flag on the mask and a respirator. Like, this guy is so freaked out. And I looked at Melissa. I'm like, it's a psychosis at this point. People who are still wearing masks, people who are still completely, we see them more. I think when I see them, I encounter more people in the airports, less now than ever before. I think I'd say it's maybe 5% of people at the airports.
No, it depends on the city.
But it depends on the city. And
sometimes 30%. Like, I've been recently, like, it's crazy the number of people.
Were you in Atlanta?
Yeah,
I feel like I see it more in Atlanta. That's a huge
New York,
huge airport.
But yes, because we've been trained not to ask.
Yeah. There
are so many ignorant people. We are enslaved. That's why. So I have a foundation called They're Your Kids. And it is, its mission, which is my mission, frankly, is to empower parents to emancipate. Emancipate from our modern schools, because it is a system of slavery that they've just pulled the wool over our eyes and told us, no, we're being really good for you.
Yeah.
Just like master in the big house.
Yeah.
You slaves, you stay here. We're being really good to you. You get 3 squares a day to go pick cotton. So simmer down, because out there it's a big bad world. And we're going to protect you. And it's very sad.
It's very sad, we've done it to ourselves. And boy, I mean, I think, and we're going to talk about this more in the next episode, but I really do think that we've reached a point of inflection in the country where people are actually asking the questions now. And I want to touch on the Department of Education and the dismantling of it, and all the things that Trump is doing. We're out of time for today. Sam Sorbo, you are such a treasure to me and to so many other people. I appreciate you coming on. If people want to find out more about you, and you guys do some pretty cool stuff. Yeah,
we do. We have a great email letter that goes out.
Yes.
Almost once a week, not quite, and that's my personal little baby. I love that. And I love the stories that come off of it. Kevin writes some of the stories and stuff. And so, and that's the way we stay in touch with people, because Facebook took him down and they buried the body.
Dude,
and they're messing with me right now. I don't even know why.
Kevin's really active on X.
Very active on X.
He loves the one-liners.
Yeah, if you don't follow him on X, you really should, because it's a bright spot in people's days. They just adore him. And then, so sorbostudios.com, sign up for the newsletter, and you can find all the books there and all the films. We have a tour to Greece that's coming up, and I think we have 2 spots that just opened up. There's a couple that got sick, so if you want to join us in Greece, just go to the events page at Sorbo Studios, and the Greece trip is there. And then all of the other events, the speaking events that we're doing, the ones that he's doing, the ones that I'm doing, the ones we're doing together. It's very fun. We're also going to Norway. We have a lot of travel coming up.
Come on.
And next year I'm doing a homeschool tour to DC for homeschool families.
I love that.
Yeah. So I did that with my family when they were younger, and it was just a blast. And so I want to give that gift of history.
Well, that's the other thing I love about you. And I think one other reason why I feel like you and I are separated at birth, you love this country.
Oh, gosh.
And have been so outspoken about it. I told you, I really hope you'll run for office sometime. I think you'd be great at it.
You hate me.
No, I love you. I do. I think it'd be great. Sam, thanks for coming on today.
Thank you.
Hope you guys have enjoyed this episode of the Heidi St. John podcast. Be sure and visit our sponsors, the Functional Medical Institute. Just hop on over to homeschoolhealth.com. If you guys want to feel better and you want to feel good about who's helping you feel better, that's where I would recommend that you go. So check them out at homeschoolhealth.com. We love you guys. Thanks for listening. Thanks for leaving reviews for the show and for getting this show up into the millions of downloads. We really appreciate those reviews. They really help us with distribution as well. So be sure and visit our sponsors. Love your people well today, you guys. And I'll see you right back here again at the intersection of faith and culture.